Reflection. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me. You ever walk into a room and feel the energy shift before anyone says a word? You sense it, that tension, that excitement. Reflection. That silence that speaks louder than sound. That's not magic, that's awareness. The art of reading people isn't about judging them. It's about understanding them. Reflection. It's about seeing beyond words, beyond smiles, beyond the masks we wear every single day. You see, people talk even when their lips don't move. Their body leans in or pulls back. Their eyes dart or they stay steady. Their arms cross or their hands open wide. The truth is never completely hidden. It's just rarely observed. And when you master the art of observation, reflection, you unlock a power that most people never tap into. The power to understand the world on a deeper level. When you can read people, you stop reacting blindly. You start responding wisely. Reflection. You don't get fooled by sweet words or empty promises because you can see what's real. You notice discomfort in silence, fear behind laughter, and confidence behind calmness. Reflection. The loudest person in the room might be the most insecure, and the quiet one in the corner might be the sharpest mind in there. The key is not to look harder. It's to see better. Reflection. Because reading people isn't about staring. It's about paying attention with purpose. It's about tuning in to the little things, the tone, the rhythm, the posture, the timing. Every blink, reflection. Every pause, every shift tells a story. And when you learn to listen with your eyes, you start hearing things that most people miss. People reveal themselves through contradictions. Reflection. Their words say one thing, but their bodies whisper another. They say, I'm fine, but their voice trembles. They smile, but it doesn't reach their eyes. Reflection. When you can catch that, not to expose them, not to use it against them, but to understand them. That's emotional intelligence at its finest. Reflection. Reading people makes you stronger in every arena, in business, in relationships, in leadership, in life. Because you can sense who's genuine, who's pretending, who's hurting. Reflection. Who's hiding. You can lead with empathy, connect with honesty, and protect your peace without having to explain yourself. But here's the truth to read people. Reflection. You must first learn to read yourself. If you don't understand your own emotions, your own reactions, reflection, your own triggers, then what you see in others will only be a reflection of your confusion. Master yourself first, then you'll see others clearly. The world is full of noise. Reflection. Everybody's talking, posting, shouting, performing, but few are truly seeing. Those who can read people, they hold the quiet power. They don't chase attention, they command it. Reflection. They don't need to argue. They already understand. They move with calm confidence because they see the truth that others overlook. So train your eyes to see, your ears to feel, reflection, your mind to slow down. Stop rushing through conversations. Watch, listen, observe. People like open books, but only to those who know how to read without words. Reflection, energy speaks before words do. You can feel it when someone walks into the room. That subtle shift in the air, reflection, that unspoken message that touches your instincts before your mind even catches up. You don't need to be told whether a person carries peace or tension. Your gut already knows. Reflection, it's that moment when laughter fills the air and you instantly sense who's genuinely happy and who's forcing a smile. Every human being radiates energy. It's invisible. Reflection. Yet it's the most honest form of communication there is. Before a single word leaves someone's mouth, their presence announces their truth. Their eyes reveal exhaustion or enthusiasm. Reflection. Their steps tell you whether they're carrying confidence or doubt, and their tone, even in silence, tells a story louder than speech ever could. When you begin to pay attention to energy, reflection, you realize that people's intentions, emotions, and moods are not hidden. They're simply ignored. You can sense when someone's words don't match the weight of their spirit. Reflection. When a room that was once warm suddenly feels cold the moment a certain person enters. That's not imagination, that's perception. And it's something we all possess, but rarely train. Reflection. Think about it. When you meet someone who's genuine, you feel it immediately. There's calmness in their presence, a natural flow in their energy. But when someone carries deceit, reflection, negativity, or arrogance, the room tightens. The conversation feels forced. Your mind doesn't analyze it, but your body reacts to it. A subtle discomfort, a pull to distance yourself. Reflection. That is your intuition reading energy long before logic has a chance to step in. Learning to sense this silent communication gives you an incredible advantage. Reflection. Because the world is full of actors, people who can say all the right words, smile at all the right times, and still hide their true intentions behind politeness. But energy cannot lie. Reflection. You can fake gestures, but you can't fake vibration. You can memorize dialogue, but you can't rehearse your aura. The body leaks truth through the smallest cracks. The shift of the eyes, reflection, the pace of breathing, the change in posture when a certain topic arises. If you train yourself to notice, you begin to see who's real, who's conflicted, who's pretending, reflection, and who's quietly in pain. This awareness transforms how you move through the world. You stop being easily impressed by loud confidence because you can feel when it's fragile, reflection. You stop believing every compliment because you sense when it carries hidden envy. You start protecting your peace, not because you're cold, but because you're conscious. Reflection. Energy doesn't need translation, it needs attention. When you tune into it, you begin to understand people not by what they say, but by what they carry. Reflection. Every person leaves an emotional fingerprint on the space they enter. Some heal it, some drain it, some ignite it. The art lies in recognizing who does which. And when you master that reflection, you'll never again walk blind into manipulation, confusion, or deception, because your instincts will always whisper the truth before a single word is spoken. Reflection. People communicate even when their lips remain sealed. Every glance, every movement, every breath carries a message that words could never capture. Reflection. You can tell when someone is confident by the way they stand tall, grounded, still. You can sense nervousness in the way hands fidget or feet shuffle. The truth is, reflection. Our bodies speak constantly, revealing the emotions we try so hard to hide. Words may deceive, but the body rarely does. A person might say, "I'm okay," while their shoulders slump. Reflection. Their eyes look away and their smile barely holds itself together. That's not acting. That's the truth escaping through the cracks of control. Reflection. When you start paying attention to how people move, how they breathe, how they look at you, you start decoding the language of humanity. Body language is the oldest language on earth. Reflection. Spoken by every culture, every age, every soul. It's not something you learn from books. It's something you sense through presence. Reflection. Watch the eyes. They are the windows not just to the soul, but to the mind's honesty. When someone avoids eye contact, it's not always guilt. Sometimes it's fear, insecurity, reflection, or deep pain. When someone locks eyes with you too intensely, it can be dominance, confidence, or hidden aggression. Reflection. The secret is not to label people. It's to understand the emotion beneath the gesture. The tone of voice, the rhythm of speech, reflection, even the pauses between sentences. They reveal more than entire paragraphs of dialogue. A person's tone carries their emotional temperature. It trembles when they're afraid, reflection, sharpens when they're angry, softens when they're sincere. Listen closely, not just to what's being said, but how it's being said. The truth often lives in the tone, not the text. Reflection, you can say the same sentence in 10 different tones, and each will tell a different story. That's why great communicators are great listeners first, not with their ears, reflection, but with their awareness. Even silence is communication. When someone suddenly goes quiet, it doesn't mean nothing's being said. Silence can scream louder than arguments. Reflection, it can show disinterest, disappointment, or deep reflection. The way a person reacts in silence tells you everything about their emotional control. Reflection, do they retreat to protect their peace or to avoid accountability? Do they stay silent because they're wise enough to listen or because they're afraid to speak? Reflection. These are the subtle distinctions that reveal who they are beneath the surface. Every gesture paints a piece of the bigger picture. The crossed arms that signal defense, reflection. The leaning forward that shows engagement. The clenched jaw that hides frustration. The art lies in noticing without judgment. Because when you truly observe, reflection, you start seeing that every human being is a collection of emotions trying to find balance between what they feel and what they show. Reading people isn't about analyzing them. Reflection, it's about being eye-aware enough to recognize their truth. The world around you becomes quieter, but deeper. Conversations stop being just exchanges of words. They become windows into hearts. Reflection. You realize that communication is not about speaking perfectly, it's about feeling deeply. And once you start reading what's unspoken, you'll never again mistake words for truth. Reflection, because you'll finally understand that people don't just talk. They reveal observation is power, not the kind that controls others, but the kind that awakens you. Reflection. When you truly learn to observe, you stop rushing through moments and start seeing them. Most people look, but they don't see. They hear, but they don't listen. They exist, reflection, but they don't pay attention. The art of reading people begins with mastering your attention, slowing it down, sharpening it, turning it into a quiet strength. Reflection. Observation is not about staring at someone or studying their every move. It's about being fully present in the moment, aware of the details that others overlook. Reflection, the smallest shifts, the twitch of an eyebrow, the tightening of a jaw, the sudden glance to the floor, can speak volumes. Power doesn't come from knowing everything, flexion. It comes from noticing what others ignore. Every environment you enter is filled with signals waiting to be read. When you walk into a meeting, a classroom, or even a casual gathering, reflection, energy flows like a conversation beneath the surface. The confident ones move with rhythm and purpose. The insecure ones shrink behind polite smiles. The observers, the ones who sit quietly, reflection, who listen before they speak. They see it all. They understand who's pretending, who's genuine, who's restless, and who's calm. Reflection. This kind of awareness doesn't just help you read people. It changes how you move through the world. You stop wasting energy trying to impress, flexion, because you realize power doesn't need to announce itself. Real power observes. Observation teaches patience. In a world where everyone rushes to respond, reflection, the one who pauses to see, gains the upper hand. You begin to notice that truth often hides between words, in the hesitation before someone answers, in the sigh that follows their laughter, reflection, in the silence after a question. These small moments carry meaning. You start understanding people's patterns, how they react under pressure, how they mask insecurity with humor, reflection, how they change their tone when they want something. When you observe long enough, people reveal themselves without realizing it. Not because you're prying, reflection, but because awareness naturally brings clarity. The more you observe, the less you assume. You stop jumping to conclusions, stop reacting emotionally, and start responding intelligently. Reflection, observation gives you distance, the kind of distance that allows you to see the bigger picture. You begin to notice how body language, tone, and energy align or contradict each other. Reflection, you start catching the things that others miss, the subtle discomfort, the quiet sincerity, the unspoken emotions behind every interaction. That's where real understanding lies. Reflection, the powerful thing about observation, is that it trains you to listen without needing to speak. It gives you control without confrontation. It builds confidence that's calm, not loud. Flexion, because when you see clearly, you don't need to force outcomes. You can guide them naturally. Observation allows you to protect yourself, connect with others, flexion, and navigate through manipulation or deceit without getting emotionally caught. It's not about being suspicious. It's about being conscious. The world is full of noise, distractions, reflection, and illusions. But the observer, the one who watches quietly, who pays attention to every nuance, moves differently. They don't get lost in chaos because they see through it. They know that power doesn't come from reacting fast, but from understanding deeply. Observation turns moments into lessons, people into open books, and silence into strategy. Reflection. It's not about control. It's about clarity. And once you master that, you stop chasing truth and start recognizing it instantly, no matter how well it's hidden. Reflection, seeing beyond words, prevents deception, because words are easy to create. They're light, they're flexible, they can be dressed up to sound beautiful, even when they carry no truth. Reflection, people have learned how to say what others want to hear, how to present confidence when they're uncertain, how to hide insecurity behind charm. But when you look beyond the words, flexion, when you start paying attention to what the body, the tone, and the energy are saying, you begin to see who's genuine and who's playing a role. Words can be rehearsed, but authenticity cannot. Reflection, every lie trembles somewhere, in the voice, in the eyes, in the hesitation between sentences. If you learn to see beyond speech, you won't just hear what's being said. Flexion, you'll understand what's being meant. Deception thrives on distraction. When someone wants to mislead you, reflection. They focus your attention on what they say, so you won't notice what they show. They'll use confidence as a disguise, laughter as a curtain, or flattery as a shield. Reflection, but their energy never lies. The eyes might sparkle, but the soul behind them flickers differently. Their words might flow, but their rhythm falters when the topic cuts too close to truth. Flexion, those who have mastered awareness can sense this, that small break in flow, that sudden shift in tone, that quick look away. These moments are like cracks in the mask. And through those cracks, reflection, the real person appears. When you rely only on words, you risk being fooled by appearances. But when you read the person behind the speech, you protect yourself from manipulation. Flexion, this doesn't mean you become paranoid or distrustful. It means you see clearly. You stop confusing eloquence with honesty. You stop mistaking confidence for character. Reflection, you stop believing that those who speak the loudest have the most truth to offer. You realize that truth rarely needs volume. It needs consistency. When someone's words and behavior align, reflection, when their eyes match their emotions, when their actions back their promises, that's real. Everything else is performance. Learning to see beyond words gives you emotional freedom. Reflection, you no longer chase explanations, you observe evidence. You stop arguing with people's words because you've already read their truth. reflection. You stop taking things personally because you understand the projection behind their behavior. You stop being misled by charm because you recognize sincerity. Flexion. It's like seeing in color while others see in black and white. You begin to understand that every lie needs noise to survive, but truth always lives in silence, calm, steady, unshaken. Reflection. When you develop this inner clarity, deception loses power over you. No matter how skillful someone's words are, you feel their energy, and it tells you everything. Reflection. You notice when kindness feels forced, when apologies lack remorse, when praise carries hidden motives. You don't need confrontation. You simply adjust your distance. Reflection. You start trusting your intuition, that quiet voice that whispers something's off. And most importantly, flexion. You stop living in confusion because you no longer rely on what people say. You rely on what they show. To see beyond words is to live with awareness. Reflection. It's to understand that truth isn't in the sentence, it's in the silence after it. It's in the way someone looks at you when they think you're not watching. Flexion. It's in the energy that lingers after the conversation ends. Words may charm, but energy reveals. And once you start trusting what you see, what you feel, reflection, what your instincts pick up before logic interferes, deception can never blind you again, because the eyes that see beyond words see truth always. Reflection. Listening with your eyes is one of the most powerful skills a person can ever develop. Most people listen only with their ears, catching words but missing meaning. Flexion. But when you listen with your eyes, you start hearing the emotions, the truth, and the intent that hide beneath the surface of spoken language. Eyes don't lie. Reflection. They reveal what the heart tries to conceal. When someone's words say, "I'm fine," but their gaze drifts away, you know they're not. When they smile, but their eyes stay empty, reflection, you know the pain hasn't left them. True listening isn't just about collecting sounds. It's about understanding souls. You learn to read the pauses, the glances, reflection, the subtle movements that reveal everything the mouth refuses to say. When you listen with your eyes, you begin to catch what most people miss. Flexion. You notice the change in a person's expression when a sensitive topic comes up, the way their eyes light up when they speak about something they love. Flexion. Or the way they shut down when they feel misunderstood. The human face is a moving canvas of emotion. Every twitch, every blink, every furrow of the brow tells a story. Flexion. The body is the echo of the mind, and the eyes are its loudest voice. If you truly pay attention, you can see joy flicker before laughter bursts, or sadness settle in before a single tear falls. Flexion. That's what it means to listen without sound, to catch the heartbeat of truth in silence. This form of listening demands patience. It requires you to slow down, to observe, reflection, to stop preparing your response while the other person is speaking. Most people don't really listen. They wait for their turn to talk. But when you listen with your eyes, flexion, you surrender your ego and give the other person your full attention. You step into their emotional world. Flexion, you start to see the difference between the words they choose and the feelings they carry. And once you do, empathy becomes effortless. You no longer need someone to explain their pain. You can see it. You no longer need someone to ask for help. Their eyes already have. This kind of listening changes relationships. It builds trust without effort because people feel seen. Flexion, not just heard. In a world where everyone's talking but few are paying attention, the one who truly listens stands apart. People open up to you not because you speak perfectly, flexion, but because your presence listens completely. You start understanding not only what people are saying, but why they're saying it. You catch the stories beneath the words. The fears, reflection, the hopes, the dreams, the disappointments. You start recognizing when silence means peace and when silence means pain. You learn that not every yes means agreement, reflection, and not every no means rejection. Listening with your eyes gives you emotional intelligence beyond measure. Reflection, you become calm in conflict because you see what the other person is really fighting for. You recognize when someone's anger is just hurt wearing armor. Reflection, you understand when confidence is real and when it's a disguise. You become more compassionate without becoming weak, more aware without becoming judgmental. Reflection, this awareness gives you control, not over others, but over your reactions. Flexion, you stop being surprised by people's behavior because you've already seen it in their eyes long before they acted it out. To listen with your eyes is to connect beyond language. Reflection, beyond barriers, beyond pretense. It's to understand that communication isn't a transaction, it's an exchange of energy. And when you can tune into that level, reflection, you'll never again feel lost in conversation or unsure of intention. Because once you start seeing with your ears and hearing with your eyes, reflection, you'll know that truth is never hidden. It's just waiting for someone patient enough to notice. Emotional contradictions reveal truth. People can disguise their words, reflection, but emotions always find a way to leak through. Every human being carries two voices, the one that speaks and the one that shows. The spoken voice tries to maintain control, to appear composed, reflection, confident, or unaffected, while the unspoken voice, the body, the eyes, the tone, exposes the truth beneath. You can hear a person say, "I'm happy for you," but their tight smile, flexion, their lowered tone, their averted gaze tell a different story. You can hear someone say, "I don't care," yet see their hands tremble slightly, their breathing quicken, reflection, their shoulders tense up. It's not the words that give people away, it's the contradiction between what they say and what their energy communicates. Reflection. When you learn to notice those subtle conflicts, you begin to understand who's being honest and who's fighting their own truth. Every emotion leaves a mark on the body. Reflection. Anger sits in clenched jaws, fear hides in fidgeting fingers, sadness lives in lowered posture, and guilt escapes through nervous laughter. Flexion. People may not even realize they're revealing these things. It's the subconscious taking over when the conscious mind tries too hard to stay composed. Most lies aren't told through words, reflection. They're told through micro-expressions, those brief flashes of real emotion that pass across the face before someone regains control. A forced smile that fades too quickly, reflection. A flicker of surprise that contradicts a calm response, a brief tightening around the eyes when they claim to be fine. Those are the moments that speak truth louder than anything else. Reflection. To notice contradictions is not to judge, but to understand. When you see someone's words and emotions clash, it doesn't always mean they're lying. Sometimes it means they're torn. Flexion. Humans are complex. A person might say they've moved on while still holding pain they don't want to admit. They might act confident because they're terrified of being seen as weak. Reflection. They might show anger because they don't know how to express hurt. The contradiction between emotion and expression often reveals internal conflict. When you can read that reflection, you see beyond behavior, you see humanity. You begin to understand that most people aren't dishonest. They're just protecting themselves from being vulnerable. Flexion. This awareness changes how you respond to others. Instead of reacting to what someone says, flexion. You begin to respond to what they feel. You recognize the difference between a harsh tone that hides fear and a quiet voice that carries strength. Reflection. You stop taking offense because you start to see the pain behind the anger. You stop being fooled by flattery because you sense the insecurity behind it. Reflection. You stop chasing closure from people who can't give it because you already understand the contradiction between their words and their hearts. Reflection. It's not about exposing them. It's about seeing them clearly. The more you notice emotional contradictions, the wiser you become. Reflection. You stop relying on surface impressions and start connecting with people on a deeper, truer level. You become grounded in truth, calm in chaos, and immune to manipulation. Reflection. You don't get lost in what's being said because you already see what's being felt. And that's the real secret. Truth doesn't need to be spoken. Reflection. It simply needs to be seen. Once you train yourself to recognize the emotional cracks in someone's mask, you'll never again be fooled by appearances. Flexion, because behind every contradiction lies a confession, and the eyes, the breath, the posture, they whisper it long before the mouth dares to admit it. Empathy is strength, not weakness. Reflection, not softness, not vulnerability, but real strength. The kind of strength that comes from understanding rather than judging, from observing rather than reacting. Flexion. When you master the art of reading people, empathy becomes your most powerful weapon. Because once you can see what someone feels beneath their words, flexion, once you can sense the struggle behind their silence, you stop taking things personally. You stop fighting unnecessary battles. You start responding from awareness, not emotion. Reflection. Empathy doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you understand where they're coming from. And that understanding gives you power. Power to stay calm when others lose control. Flexion. Power to forgive when others hold grudges. Power to lead without needing to dominate. The mistake people make is believing that empathy is weakness, that caring means being naive. Reflection. But the truth is only the strong can truly be empathetic. It takes strength to listen when others shout. It takes control to remain gentle in a world that teaches aggression. Reflection. When you read people through empathy, you see not only their behavior, but the pain behind it. You understand that anger is often fear in disguise, that arrogance is insecurity trying to survive. Reflection. That distance is sometimes the only way a broken person knows how to protect themselves. You realize that everyone carries a story, and not all of them are easy to tell. Once you understand that flexion, you move differently. You stop blaming and start observing. You stop reacting to pain with more pain, and instead you respond with awareness. Empathy gives you emotional X-ray vision. Reflection. You start seeing the wounded child behind the harsh adult, the exhausted soul behind the fake smile, the silent cry behind the strong face. And that vision changes how you deal with people. Reflection. You don't need to argue anymore because you understand why they're saying what they're saying. You don't need to force anyone to see your perspective. Reflection. Because you've already stepped into theirs. You begin to handle situations with calm precision, not because you're detached, but because you care deeply while staying grounded. Reflection, that balance between heart and control, that's what makes empathy such an incredible force. When you approach people with empathy, you create connection without words. They feel seen. Reflection. Even if they never explain themselves, they feel safe, even if they never admit their fears. That's the magic of being able to read emotions without judgment. Reflection. You start lifting people just by being present, by being kind, by simply understanding what they're going through. Reflection. And here's the most beautiful part. The empathy you give others begins to heal you too. Because when you understand others, you begin to understand yourself. Reflection. You start forgiving your own mistakes, recognizing your own wounds, and softening toward your own flaws. Empathy also protects your peace. Reflection. You no longer absorb negativity because you understand it's not yours to carry. When someone tries to bring chaos, you don't take it personally. You see their pain, their frustration, reflection, and their confusion, and you let it pass without letting it poison your energy. Empathy gives you emotional armor, not the kind that blocks love, but the kind that blocks unnecessary pain. Reflection. It teaches you that strength doesn't come from how loud you can be, but from how steady you can remain in the face of noise. When you live with empathy, your perception becomes sharper, reflection, your patience deeper, and your presence more powerful. You don't need to shout to be heard. Your calmness speaks louder. You don't need to prove your worth. Reflection. Your understanding already shows it. Empathy doesn't weaken you. It refines you. It turns you into the kind of person who can walk through storms and still carry peace in their eyes. Reflection. And that kind of power, the power to understand, to connect, to stay gentle in a hard world. That's the kind of strength most people never reach. Self-awareness comes first. Reflection. Before you can read anyone else, you must learn to read yourself because the world you see is often a reflection of the world within you. If your mind is clouded, your perception will be too. Reflection. If your heart carries unresolved pain, you'll project it on others without realizing it. Self-awareness is the foundation of understanding people. It means knowing your own emotions. Reflection. Your triggers, your patterns, and your reactions. When you understand yourself deeply, you no longer get lost in other people's behavior. Reflection. You stop taking everything personally because you can tell the difference between what's yours and what's theirs. You become emotionally intelligent, not easily provoked. Reflection, not easily deceived, not easily swayed by surface appearances. Most people want to understand others, but they can't even explain themselves. They react out of habit, speak from ego, reflection, and feel without awareness. And because they don't understand their own emotions, they misread everyone else's. When you lack self-awareness, someone's silence feels like rejection, reflection. Their confidence feels like arrogance. Their boundaries feel like rudeness. But when you know yourself, you stop interpreting life through insecurity. You start seeing things as they are, reflection, not as your wounds make them appear. That clarity is power because it gives you emotional balance in a world full of confusion. Self-awareness is not about perfection, it's about honesty. Reflection, it's about looking in the mirror and admitting your truth, your flaws, your fears, your mistakes, your strengths. When you're aware of your emotions, reflection, you can control them instead of letting them control you. You learn to recognize when you're projecting your feelings onto others, when your judgment is being clouded by bias, reflection, when your emotions are speaking louder than your logic. You stop letting temporary moods make permanent decisions. You become your own observer, watching your thoughts, your tone, reflection, your energy, and in doing so, you evolve beyond reaction and response. Once you achieve that level of self-understanding, reading others becomes natural. Reflection. You see patterns in behavior because you've seen them in yourself. You recognize pain behind anger because you've felt it before. You notice manipulation not because you're paranoid, reflection, but because you've learned what it feels like to be genuine. Self-awareness tunes your perception. It clears the emotional fog that blinds so many people. Reflection. It gives you patience when others rush to judge, compassion when others rush to criticize, and calmness when others panic. Without self-awareness, your ability to read people becomes dangerous. Reflection. You might confuse empathy with attachment, intuition with assumption, or awareness with control. But when you truly know yourself, you can read people with wisdom, not with ego. Reflection. You can understand them without trying to fix them. You can connect deeply without losing yourself in the process. Reflection, that's the key, to be so centered in your own emotions that no one else's chaos can shake your peace. The more you understand yourself, the clearer the world becomes. Reflection, you begin to notice that every person you meet is a mirror reflecting something back to you. Your patience, your fear, your kindness, your shadow. Reflection, you stop trying to change others and start mastering yourself. And in that mastery, you unlock a higher kind of awareness. One that doesn't just see people's actions, but their intentions. Reflection, you sense who's coming from love and who's coming from pain. You begin to move through life with grace because you no longer need to prove anything or defend everything. Reflection, self-awareness gives you the ultimate clarity, the ability to see both yourself and others without illusion. When you know who you are, you can't be easily manipulated, distracted, reflection, or deceived. You trust your intuition because it's no longer mixed with confusion. You understand that peace doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from mastering yourself. Reflection, and that's where true vision begins. The kind that sees not just faces, but truth. Silence holds power. Not the kind of silence that comes from fear or submission, reflection, but the kind that carries control, awareness, and deep strength. When you truly learn to read people, you begin to understand that silence isn't empty. It's full of signals, emotions, reflection, and meaning. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because it exposes truth. It removes the noise, the performance, the distractions. But those who master silence, reflection, who can stand still in the middle of chaos without needing to speak, they hold the real authority. Because silence reveals what words often hide. Reflection, it's in the quiet moments that you see people most clearly. Their body starts to speak, their eyes start to tell stories, and their true nature emerges without the mask of conversation. Reflection, when you sit in silence with someone, you learn more about them than in hours of talk. You notice how they handle stillness, whether they stay calm or fidget. Reflection, whether they meet your eyes or avoid them, whether they relax or build invisible walls around themselves. Some people use words to hide. Silence forces authenticity. Reflection, it strips away the performance and shows you who's comfortable with themselves and who's running from their own thoughts. Reflection, the way a person reacts to silence is a direct reflection of their inner world. The one who's at peace within carries calmness into the quiet. Reflection, the one who's restless within brings discomfort to every still moment. That's why silence is such a powerful mirror. It reflects truth without effort. Silence also teaches patience. Reflection, it teaches you that not every question needs an immediate answer and not every situation needs a reaction. When you know how to stay silent, you stop being controlled by impulse. Reflection, you stop revealing your thoughts too early. You start listening not just to others, but to the space between their words. You learn to read the hesitation, the pause, the unfinished sentence. Reflection, you realize that people often reveal more in what they don't say than in what they do. In those quiet gaps, emotions slip through. The sigh that escapes, the nervous laugh. Reflection, the subtle shift in tone. Silence gives you time to observe, to understand, to choose your response wisely instead of reacting emotionally. Reflection, there's a quiet kind of confidence that comes from those who know how to use silence. They don't need to argue to prove a point. They don't need to fill the air with explanations. Reflection, their calm presence alone speaks volumes. Because real strength doesn't shout, it resonates. When you master silence, people start listening to your stillness. Reflection, they start feeling your energy even when you say nothing. It's the kind of power that doesn't demand attention but naturally draws it. In moments of confrontation, silence disarms aggression. Reflection, in moments of decision, silence brings clarity. In moments of chaos, silence becomes your shield. When you learn to be silent, you gain the upper hand not over others, but over yourself. Reflection, you realize that control isn't about dominating conversation, it's about mastering reaction. You don't reveal your emotions too quickly. Reflection, you protect your thoughts until you've observed enough to understand. Silence becomes your strategy, not to manipulate, but to comprehend. It gives you space to think, to reflect. Reflection, to see things for what they are rather than what your emotions want them to be. The world will always try to rush you into responses, but silence gives you the grace to choose wisdom over impulse. Reflection, in silence, truth breathes. It's where intuition grows, where awareness sharpens, where clarity takes shape. Reflection, every great observer understands that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of understanding. When you can stand in that stillness, you no longer need to prove yourself. Reflection, defend yourself or explain yourself. Your composure becomes your language and your peace becomes your message. That's why silence is power, because it's unshakable, untouchable, reflection, and undeniable. True mastery of reading people comes when you stop looking only outward and begin to turn that observation inward. Reflection, The greatest readers of others are first great readers of themselves. Because how can you truly see someone else clearly if you've never learned to face your own truth? Reflection, every perception we have of the world passes through the lens of our own mind, our biases, emotions, and insecurities. If that lens is clouded, what we see in others will always be distorted. Reflection. You may mistake someone's quietness for arrogance because you yourself fear being ignored. You may see dishonesty in others because you carry unresolved distrust within. Reflection. You may assume someone's confidence is pride because deep down you struggle with self-worth. Reading people begins with self-awareness because the mind projects before it perceives. Reflection. When you start studying your own emotions, reactions, and patterns, you gain an entirely new level of clarity. You notice how your energy shifts when you're uncomfortable. Reflection. How your tone changes when you feel defensive. How your body tightens when you're trying to hide something. Reflection. That same awareness you bring to yourself allows you to read those same cues in others, not with judgment, but with understanding. Reflection. You realize that the signs people give off are universal because emotions are universal. Anger looks different on every face, but feels the same in every heart. Fear may take different shapes, reflection, but its rhythm is always familiar once you've felt it within yourself. Self-awareness also protects you from being deceived. When you know your own emotional triggers, reflection, you become harder to manipulate. You stop reacting impulsively to charm, guilt, or flattery because you recognize when your emotions are being played. Reflection. You stop projecting your hopes or fears onto others and start seeing them as they truly are. You become grounded, balanced, and sharp. You listen more, speak less, and observe deeper. Reflection. You stop needing people to act a certain way for your comfort because you've learned to find peace within. And that calmness, that emotional stability, reflection, it becomes your greatest advantage. It allows you to see the world as it is, not as your emotions wish it to be. The truth is, every person you meet is a reflection of something within you. Reflection. The impatient test your patience. The dishonest test your discernment. The kind remind you of the goodness you still believe in. When you read people, reflection, you are also reading life's way of teaching you about yourself. Every encounter becomes a mirror. When you see this, you no longer get lost in people's behavior. You learn from it. Reflection, you don't take things personally. You interpret them wisely. You don't react to energy. You understand it. You become both observer and student, calm, aware, and always learning. Reflection, to master reading people, therefore, is not just about understanding others. It's about transforming yourself. Reflection. It's about being emotionally intelligent enough to remain centered even when people around you are not. It's about being compassionate enough to see pain behind anger, fear behind arrogance, reflection, insecurity behind control. And most importantly, it's about having the humility to admit that sometimes the person you need to read most is you. Reflection. Because once you truly understand yourself, your emotions, your motives, your weaknesses, your strength, no one can deceive you, no situation can overwhelm you, and no mask can fool you. Reflection. You will see through others with clarity because you have already seen through yourself. That is where true mastery begins, not in the eyes of others, but in the mirror of your own awareness. Reflection. In the end, mastering the art of reading people without saying a word isn't about gaining power over others. It's about gaining power over yourself. It's about walking through this noisy, reflection, chaotic world with a calm awareness that cuts through every mask, every lie, every performance. When you can see beyond words, when you can hear what isn't being spoken, you move differently. Reflection. You stop reacting, you start understanding, you stop assuming, you start observing, you stop judging, you start connecting. Reflection. Because the real wisdom isn't in knowing what people say, it's in feeling what they mean. It's in sensing their truth when their voice hides it. Reflection. It's in hearing the silence between their sentences, reading the story in their eyes, and recognizing the emotion in their stillness. That's where real connection lives, not in noise, reflection, not in chatter, but in presence. So walk through life with that quiet power. Let your awareness be your strength. Listen deeper, observe sharper, and speak only when your words carry truth. Reflection. The world doesn't need more people who talk. It needs more people who see. And when you become one of them, you'll move through every room, every crowd. Reflection. Every moment, not trying to be understood, but understanding everything around you. That's not just communication. That's mastery.